Hi, I'm Cindy Abbott-Litro for Behind the Camera, and today we are with Jon Dandes, who is Corporate Vice President for Rich Products. And you know, on the surface of it all, we'd say, well, what does the Corporate Vice President of Rich Products have to do with the movie business? But you know, so much of what the film industry that has sort of been growing in this area, it's involved in almost all kinds of things. You've been involved in government relations, so that you have seen how sort of this idea has grown. I mean, you're the head of the board at ECMC, involved with the university. All of these things, while on the surface you say they don't have anything to do with it, but they do. And I guess part of it is, what to you is the value of having a film industry within this community?
Cindy, as we have seen over the past couple of years, the whole economic model in Western New York has changed. Right. And we know Bethlehem Steel and in the real hard industries that particularly the city urban areas on the East Coast have really changed into places that are very heavily vested in higher education. In the case of Western New York, in healthcare. Right. And absolutely, over the past 5 to 7 years, there's been an awakening because of our proximity both to Toronto and New York City, that filmmaking in Western New York is going to be, and continues to be, a viable and very exciting industry for not only growth in the economic development area, but for the training of new and creative people, and ultimately, at the end of the day, the fostering of the whole entertainment concept, as people, particularly this past year, have suddenly realized that watching TV and staying at home, is become maybe the wave of the future. So, in a curious set of circumstances, Western New York is perfectly positioned to take advantage of the creative process that allow those films and TV shows to be produced here.
You know, you talked about the fact that it has changed, and I think about the first sort of time when I came into Buffalo, they had just, I think, done The Natural here. So it was really all about finding a location. And the rock pile, which you knew very well, was what was selected at that time. But it was all about the location. It wasn't so much about the workforce. It wasn't so much about any of the ancillary things. And there's really been this sort of evolution over that time.
Well, The Natural, one of the classic movies of all time, actually, much less probably the biggest movie that has ever been made here in Buffalo. That's still iconic. You can still, if you stay up late enough at night, see it virtually once a week on some station, which showcased Buffalo at the time. But I will tell you, and it's an interesting irony, at least for me, I think the first major movie that was made here, a movie called The Burning, done in North Tonawanda, and the executive producer at that time, maybe not so popular these days, the first movie he ever made was Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
And, of course, went on to ignominy,
yes.
But certainly not before 70 or 80 Academy Awards. And but the first film was done here in Tonawanda.
And certainly
because of location.
Right.
Yep.
Because of location. And now what's happening is, because of the film credits that the governor has established here in the state, and that the mayor had, for a time here in the city, people were looking here because it was purely economic, that it was the cheapest place to film. Mm-hmm. But we are, it seems as if the workforce is now being created so that they can support more than just a film that's coming here for a location.
Because what's happened is there's been this almost coalition of great locations that go from Niagara Falls to Allegheny County to a workforce that is very talented, and accessibility. If you really want to start to talk about both talent in the crafts, excuse me, and in the acting side and the talent side, easily accessible from either two huge places, obviously New York City and Toronto.
Bob and Mindy Rich at Rich Products, always very supportive of the community. Mm-hmm. Certainly we know them through this food product business, but also the involvement with baseball. and really anything that's there to help the community. They got involved, and I, have been supporting sort of Broadway shows and things like that. And there was an announcement that came out in July of 2020 about a soundstage. So that on their point, they see that there's a potential here for a business opportunity.
And I appreciate your mentioning that, because what's happened, and this is probably 7 or 8 years old now, both Bob and Mindy Rich became very active in the producing of Broadway musicals, and are currently involved in that very heavily. In fact, it was announced a couple of weeks ago that their latest production, Diana, the musical, is going to open on December 1st, both on Broadway and, interestingly enough, to your point, on Netflix.
I saw that announcement,
Yes.
but did not realize that they were attached to that.
Yeah, they're the primary producers, along with some partners in New York City, but they are certainly the driving creative forces behind that. And that exposure, I think, has been part and parcel of the motivation to take what was used to be our plant that made Coffee Rich, and move forward with the creation of along with some other individuals, the film studio.
And that is it could be a game changer.
Well, that's what we're thinking, and we're moving along and doing all of the submittals and getting the approvals from the city and all of the construction elements, but we're very excited about it, and it's indicative of or symbolic of where we think the economy is going in Western New York.
Well, what's interesting about this, your involvement, because as I mentioned, you sort of have your fingers in a lot of different pies, and a number of them are on the government end. Mm-hmm. That this is something that, it's a creative endeavor, making films, yet it's really an economic impact, an economic development issue at the same time.
Well, once again, you hit the nail on the head. Our film commissioner, Tim Clark, and the film commission, which you head, has been tremendously effective in all of a sudden we start talking about filmmaking in the context of hotel rooms and restaurant sales when they're open, and crafts and lumber and paint and all of those drivers that are important to creating that film product or that TV product. And so, if you would think about the impact on catering and restaurants just in that one context, and what a movie studio or movie production brings that would not typically be here, it's fascinating and hugely lucrative.
Well, I was just thinking, your role on being a part of UB,
Mm-hmm.
On the council there,
Mm-hmm.
that it's also creating sort of a new class of workers for our region. That, we've talked about healthcare, there's government, there's, our sports venues, all of these different things, but it's also sort of a new area to train workers in.
But we've evolved from making steel and to some degree automobile parts to creating film. And that creative exercise is putting a lot of people to work. And we're very excited about that because it is a growth area and something that 10 years ago maybe no one thought about.
We have had a lot of inquiries that come in about the Film Commission and why we are being so successful here. I mean, that we really have had a great deal of success, but it's really been on a very granular level. Why do you think that we are being successful here where others aren't?
I think there are a couple of things, and that's a great question, which points to the willingness of Western New Yorkers to embrace this new industry and the opportunity that our government leaders have seen in making city and state and county resources available. And I'm not just talking about dollars, but the ability to close the Kensington Expressway, to do
Teenage
Ninja
Mutant Ninja Turtles, yeah.
You couldn't do that on the Long Island Expressway in New York or in Chicago or Los Angeles, or closing the Grand Island Bridge, for yet another movie. And And those
The
things
Niagara
happen.
Falls Airport. I mean, the opportunity for them to have access to an airport.
You know, I mean, East Aurora as a city, as a village, you know, has probably been on more Hallmark Christmas TV shows than any. And so there's that willingness to go that extra mile, which you would not find in many other places.
Does it
And
surprise you? Does it surprise you that all of a sudden this is like, you know, something we're talking about as a viable industry?
No, it's thrilling actually, because you could just paint the scenario of a film commissioner someplace else in the United States walking into a governor's office or a mayor's office or a county executive's office and say, we want to shut down your major thoroughfare into the city for the next 2 weeks. They'd be laughed out of, if not arrested. Instead, you know, our mayor said, okay, let's figure out how to do it. Let's minimize the impact to the neighborhood, but we're going to do that. And next thing you know, there's a multi-million-dollar film production going on, which has as its center the closing of the Kensington.
It's wild. It is, when you say thrilling.
And that
it
gets
is,
replicated 15, 20 times a year.
and it's a very creative way of sort of rebranding your region. And it's one that many people probably would have never thought would have happened here in Western New York. And you're at the center of it, John.
Well, I don't know if that's true, but I have been around you know, some of these movie sets where those questions have been asked, you know, almost as a throwaway, and when the answer comes back yes, you see the directors and producers going, really? we can do that?
Well, I think it's great, and I
Yeah,
can
we
tell
can do
you
that.
think it's great as well. And let's just hope that it continues on into the future, because it is. It's great for our community. Thank you for all that you do
And
in
thank
this,
you for
John.
all that you've done as chair of the film commission. I'm sure you've had your calls in the middle of the night saying, he just asked for a what?
It's surprising, but it's fun. Jon Dandes, thank you for being with, and thank you for being with us once again for Behind the Camera. See you next month.